All right, so could you please introduce yourself?
I'm Alan Faulhaber, and I'm Owen's grandfather, and I was born in February 15th, 1945.
Okay. So we're gonna ask you some questions here on the topic of aging and about your life. The first question is, what are some of the most important lessons you feel you have learned over the course of your life?
I thought about this question a little bit, and I think that young people think about where they're going to live. They think about their jobs once they're done with school. They think about possessions and a lot of other things, but in the end, it all comes down to family.
All right. Some people say that they have had difficult or stressful experiences, but they have learned important lessons from them. Is that true for you? And can you give some examples of some things that you've learned from those experiences?
Well, I think when my father died, I was 15 years old, starting my junior year at St. Ignatius, and it was quite a shock. He had been ill before, but I was called home for the middle of a football game. And I remember that night, and I remember that it had a profound effect on me. I had, or at least I felt, I had to grow up a lot quicker than maybe I would otherwise. I was the baby of the family, but when my siblings were so much older and gone, I felt like I had to be a man maybe a little quicker.
As you look back over your life, do you see any turning points or key events or experiences that changed the course of your life or set you on a different track?
Well, obviously, I think, my dad dying, but also the Vietnam War, that was on everybody's mind as my college was ending, and I thought about going into the Army, but I was educated as an engineer, so they classified me as critically skilled because I took a job working with companies that would be making basic steel and ammunition loaders and things like that. So I avoided that. I remember the lottery. My number was further down the line, and as a result, I evaded the war again. Not that I wouldn't have gone, but certainly that was a big concern about me, for all my friends. At that point in life, that was a big deal.
Okay, building off of that question, how do you think the attitude towards war has changed in America from Vietnam to today?
Well, certainly World War II was a great victory for the U.S. and the free world, and then came Korea, and that was kind of a stalemate and a grimy war that nobody wanted to talk about too much. And then you slipped even further with Vietnam. It wasn't popular because we weren't winning. People were dying. We didn't understand, I think, a lot of us, why we were there. And the lesson I learned from that, and I think the U.S. should have learned from that, was that you don't go into a war without really good reasons, and if you have to, you go in to win.
Okay. The next question is, what is the secret to a happy marriage?
Well, don't ask your grandmother that, but I would say compromise. That's probably the single greatest word I could come up with, because even though you hopefully are going to wind up like I did with somebody compatible, maybe not in decorating or other little things, but certainly in things like how you feel about your children's education, whether they have kids in the first place, all those, whether your religion gets in the way or enhances your marriage, all of those things are important when you're choosing a wife. But once you're in there, compromising makes things go well. And if you're not willing to compromise, there's going to be problems.
Okay. The next question is, what are some of the important choices or decisions that you have had to make in your life?
I think some important decisions, probably I sailed through the early part of my life because you went to the grade school where you lived. I went to St. Ignatius because I had 3 brothers that went there, a father that went there, all my uncles went there. So yeah, everything was kind of planned out. I went to John Carroll for a couple years. That was all because of money, really. I was able to get some money, scholarship money. And then I went to the University of Detroit because they had co-op and I could get more money and get an engineering degree. So up through college, I would say I didn't make a whole lot of really tough decisions. But once I got out of college, I had to decide on a job and one that could put me in different cities. And I, subsequently wound up in Cincinnati rather than Cleveland with the company that I went to work for. And so that was a big decision. Do I want to move or do I want to live in Cleveland where I'm comfortable? I chose to move, and then from there, everything happened. Meeting your grandmother, getting married, having the kids, trying to buy a house, and just one thing after another is stacked until I was about 49, and the company that I worked for was going to be sold, and I was able to go and hawk my house and everything I had and get with 2 other guys that were willing to do the same and buy the company. And that turned out to be the greatest business decision that I ever made. I was really lucky there. So I would say that's a summary of some of the big decisions.
Okay. What would you say you know now about living a happy and successful life that you didn't know when you were 20?
Well, I took so many things for granted probably when I was young. And it shook me up when my father died, and I had to start thinking about things. But when I got older, I would think that what I said before about your family and the relatives, I was very fortunate to marry your grandma because she had a big family and I had a big family in Cleveland, so I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed my brother-in-laws, and when I was young, you can't imagine what all is going to happen to you. You just have to have faith and keep on going. And I think I learned that my religion was probably more important to me as I got older than it was when you take it for granted and you just pay it lip service. I think now that I'm closer to the end, much closer to the end than to the beginning of my life, you have to take into account what kind of person you're going to be seen as, and I think it affects the way you behave.
What would you say are some of the major values or principles that you live by?
I think my religion, people, it's very in for people to make fun of people that are into religion or serious things like that, ethics and morals. It's, not hip to do a lot of this stuff. But the truth of the matter is everybody's trying to live their life, and I think most people generally want to live a good life. And to me, religion is a tool to live a good life. And I think that people that, they may be able to do that without it, but it's much harder.
Okay. What are some of the most difficult things about growing older?
Well, there's different aspects of that. I think number one is your health. It's going to deteriorate no matter what you think. You're not going to be the same person. The trick is, can you be healthy enough to do the important things that you really like to do? I've not been real healthy, as you know. I've had a number of things, heart attacks, stroke, broken bones, shoulder operation, knee operation. But through it all, at least I've been able to do what I want to do. So I think health becomes very important. From a financial standpoint, I think the transition from when you're first in business or first starting out with a first serious job out of college, you just want to have enough money to have a good time, live someplace decent, do a lot of fun things, and then you transition into your life becomes more serious. You have family to take care of, children to raise, and this requires you to accumulate. So you go through this phase of your life where you're accumulating money and wealth to order to protect yourself and to take care of your immediate family. And then you, if you're lucky, like I was lucky with my company, all of a sudden when you retire, you realize now you have to make a transition from accumulating things to shedding them. And because you realize they're no good to anybody unless they're used. So you have to struggle because part of you is saying, I'm going to run out of money. But the other part, your brain and your financial people and everybody else are saying, you're going to be all right, you got enough. So you start deciding what and where to spend your money and rid yourself of the wealth and how much you want to help somebody in your family without possibly ruining their incentive. So all of this, I think that's the big difference as you grow older.
Okay. What would you say is the most rewarding thing for you as you've grown older?
I probably shouldn't say this on camera, but I think the grandkids are a big reward for me. I think I've made that comment before. If you could have grandkids without having kids, it would be wonderful. Because, and I've told your father and others that I always wish they would have a kid just like them, and because I thought it would teach them a good lesson. But I think that, yeah, the grandkids and the family and all of that is so much more important. See, you don't think of that when you're younger, but you sure value it when you're older. I got it into a unfortunate debate one time with a shirt-tail relative of a friend of mine in Cleveland who claimed that she didn't need to be married, she didn't need to religion, she knocked that, she knocked all these things down, many of whom that I valued. And I just said, you're 23 years old, tell me the same thing when you're 55 living in your apartment with your cat. And then I got out, I unfriended her so I wouldn't have to listen to it anymore. But I really believe that. You get older and you find things that are really important.
What life advice would you like to pass along to your grandchildren?
I probably would advise them to enjoy the moment, think about the consequences of your actions. Hopefully, if you're going to be stubborn, that you're stubborn about the good things and the values that you have, because being stubborn can be a good quality if you're using it the right way. And I think, relax and work hard, but the good things will happen if you just keep your head down and work hard and keep your values. And I think you'll have a good life. I'm still an optimist in spite of all the crap that goes on in the world, and there's plenty of it. But I think we live in a great place. We're all very lucky to be, You have to be a real nut not to think that you're living in the best place. So you have a tremendous advantage.
Okay. What kind of legacy would you like to leave with your family and the people who you've been close to?
That's a tough one. Probably just want them to know that I cared about them, and that I wish them a happy life, and that to reassure them that I had a very happy life and because of them, and not to be too upset when I go, because I don't regret it.
All right. Well, that's all we have. Thank you.
Okay.